guys have a bad last name, but they've actually done something quite okay. But it's really just unforgivable because they are complicit to historical revisionism. They lie about their degrees. What else are they lying about?
Hello everybody and welcome to the Meetup, the Filipino Freethinkers podcast that's also a video. I'm Red and I'm joined today again by Nicole.
Hi.
Hello, and you are an expert on deliberative democracy.
Okay, yes.
That's what you work on, and that's what our episode today is going to be about. It's going to be about voting, particularly finding the correct people to vote for. That's going to be part of it. But what we're going to focus on, most of all, is how we can encourage others in productive ways to vote for the people we want them to vote. Like I have been wondering about this for a very long time. Like, I want people to stop voting for plunderers, for people who are would-be dictators or actual dictators in the making. Bigots, or plagiarists, you know. But there are definitely better ways, because I've been seeing people like just outright calling people stupid for voting for certain politicians. Maybe there are more positive ways. Can you tell us about what you've learned in your work on deliberative democracy? How do we influence people in more positive and productive ways?
So actually the premise of deliberative democracy is really to say, when we talk about democracy, it's not just about voting, because voting is really just aggregating.
One part,
it's just aggregating our preferences. The difference between deliberative democracy and just equating democracy to voting is that we have to recognize the importance of the kinds of conversations and reason-giving that takes place before we make a collective decision. So when we contextualize that when it comes to elections, one of the most important democratic processes here is not just people casting a ballot. What's equally important is the process preceding that process of casting a ballot, which is the kind of conversation we have about selecting our leaders. That's where our deliberations should kick in. And I was thinking that we can use this episode to kind of deliberate about our preferences for senators. And of course, you live, can I tell them where your district is?
Like, yes, you can.
So San Juan, for example, is an interesting place to choose a mayor. I'm a Makati City voter, also interesting because a brother and a sister are fighting each other for the mayoralty post. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is that our decisions, I think, have to be justified to each other why we're selecting one candidate over the other, which is kind of a response to the idea that our votes are private.
Yes.
So when you go to a ballot box, supposedly it's a secret ballot, no one's meant to know your vote. Of course, that's important for security, especially if there are goons there threatening people. But ideally, we're able to openly discuss our preferences and justify why we like the candidates we're voting for. So that's the deliberative part of elections.
So I like what you said there. So not only are the elections like just one part out of many parts, but even the conversations leading up to that is something that us as voters need to participate in for it to be a healthy democracy.
Exactly.
Right? Like, if it's an exercise where we just not talk about politics like every day of the year, except or we don't even talk about it on the day of the election. We just vote, and then miraculously we see, I don't like. I'm so surprised. These are the people who apparently people. You know, that's not an ideal democracy in your book. It's an ideal democracy would be one where conversations happen way before, leading up to that particular day of the exercise. But what about the Philippines now? Because conversations here have been very, very bad. Like, it's been like families have broken up. They have stopped talking to each other. Unfriending has happened.
Exactly. But I think there are spaces to keep doing that. And of course, this podcast is one of them. And I think, the online digital space is also increasingly becoming an interesting space to have these discussions, as long as I think politicians are responsive to the kinds of things that voters say. So, I mean, I was talking to CNN Philippines earlier about the senatorial debates, and it really upsets me that some candidates don't want to join.
Yes.
And these usually are candidates, from how I read it, this is not CNN's take, but this is my take, like candidates who are already leading in the polls have no interest in being part of a debate because they probably think they're safe.
Yeah.
But I think even more we have to grill these people and ask for their positions on controversial issues, especially in the context of an increasingly authoritarian regime, where they stand.
Yeah.
So, yes, for me, that's non-deliberative. Not showing up in a debate is so non-deliberative, and we have to call them out.
Because they're mostly thinking about the bottom line, which for them is getting the most votes.
Exactly.
So if they estimate that an exercise, be it a debate or an interview with someone, will not benefit them in terms of increasing their votes.
Yeah,
why
or
would they
doing an Instagram live and respond to people's questions. Come on.
So ideally we want to explain to people that the conversation is important as well as the vote itself.
Exactly, yes.
Right? So what do we do then to encourage these healthy conversations online? Let's say I'm a critic of the Duterte administration, right? He has certain maybe.
Yes.
So certain candidates are, he's been telling people left and right, vote for Bongo, vote for Bato, vote for my daughter, vote for whoever, right? And I want to talk to people who are supporting these people.
Yeah.
Do I even make an attempt? Or do I just give up because expecting them to vote for more principled candidates would be an exercise in futility? What do you think?
It depends who you talk to. I mean, of course, there are people who are already, how do you say that? Set. You can't change their minds. But I think there's still a value in engaging in that conversation to understand the reasoning behind it or the lack thereof. So, for example, one of the insights that I got spending time in Mindanao is that they really value the idea that Duterte is the first Mindanaoan president, right? So they're willing to overlook other character flaws because of the symbolic value of having a Mindanaoan there as president.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree, but I understand.
Yes.
But I also tell them, but I will fight back because I disagree with you, but I get where you're coming from. But also understand where I'm coming from as someone who grew up in Manila, seeing communities being torn apart by the drug war. That matters to me.
Yeah.
So I think there is room for that engagement. But the thing that we have to watch out for is to not impose what we think other people's opinions are, because I think we tend to do that. And I've witnessed so many Facebook fights that are just, it's gotten so insane because we weren't really listening to each other. We just assumed that this is the other person's argument because we automatically categorize them as fanatics. I don't think that's always the case. I still think that's the exception.
So what you did there, you're asking them, why do you support him? And you're finding out that people support him because of that Mindanao vote, their identity as Mindanaoans.
Yeah.
Like you're having listened to them will do more for them to listen to you than you calling them stupid for voting for a certain candidate, right?
But I think the trick is always to ask questions rather than to make judgments right away, especially if you're talking to let's say a hardliner, for a lack of a better word. Because if you already know that you cannot persuade this person, what you can get from that conversation is an understanding why that person thinks that way. So I think that's good enough, diba? For us to see the perspective of the other. At least we know how to fight back better.
Yeah. Actually, if we just learn from people who disagree with us and we know that, okay, this is our to-do list now.
Yeah.
Like whoever our candidate is, we have to make sure that this person also addresses the needs of these particular people, because if they're not addressed, we see what happens. Populism happens.
Exactly.
The threat of authoritarianism happens.
Yeah.
So just listening to the other side is equally valuable as telling them our side.
Yes.
I think that's a very good point, because too many times I see on Facebook like these posts just calling the other side stupid. The people who vote for Marcos, the people who vote for Duterte, for Bong Revilla, they're just stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Lito Lapid.
Lito Lapid.
Yeah.
Like, why would you vote for Lito Lapid? You're stupid.
Yeah.
Like, what does that really do? Like, and to me, I think all that does is provide an exercise in catharsis.
Yeah.
You want to let off some steam. You're stressed. You're distressed. You want to vent your anger, and you do it against the people you're blaming for these politicians being in power, which is the people who voted for them.
And we often forget that we have bad voters because there's a bad set of choices to begin with. I cannot complete a 12-person slate without making compromises, right? So I think the main issue here is not that voters are stupid, but it's because, to be honest, a lot of candidates are stupid. so we really don't have a choice. So it's really on the supply side of politicians,
so
right?
how many How many people can you put in your slate without having to make a compromise?
Nothing. Zero.
Zero.
But I think
So from number one, there's already a compromise there.
But I think that's fine because there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. All of these candidates are flawed, which I think is the reason why we need to deliberate our choices, because definitely we're making value judgments. So the example that we were discussing earlier is Pia Cayetano. I think we have to declare that this is not a paid ad. We're not.
This is not a paid ad.
We're not subtle influencers or anything. But I think Pia Cayetano is a perfect example because we are big supporters of the reproductive health bill. We like her politics, but I'm incredibly disappointed when she says that, what is it? Boys will be boys, right? When the president uses misogynistic language, her exact comment was, I don't want to be called a manang, right? I don't want to be stereotyped as a killjoy when boys talk that way. And I'm like, no, everyday politics is as important as institutional politics.
And I think she knows these things. I think she's smart enough to know these things. It's just that when it came to a choice between don't say anything versus say some token response just for the response,
or not to be picked on by the president at some point.
She went for the other side, which is unfortunate. So people were really criticizing her when she was just shutting up and being quiet. But I prefer that to just revealing that you're pandering to these people.
Exactly.
But as you said, she was with us all the way with the reproductive health bill. She was the number one politician who I thought understood the importance of secularism and separation of church and state. When she talked about the importance of secularism, she clearly got it the most out of all of the politicians. So it really hurt me, and I expect a lot of other supporters of hers as well, when she continued to ally with the side of Duterte. I don't think she's on the level of Alan Peter. It would be hard for her to sink that low. I think only Alan Peter can reach that level. But still, at the end of the day, positive and negative, I have to make a choice. Do I vote for this person?
Exactly. Do you punish her or do you just keep on supporting her despite the flaws?
Yes, because when there is another vote that has to deal with stuff like divorce, or the RH law, or anything progressive and has to do with secularism, I think that she would still support it.
Definitely.
I think that she would still speak for it, and I'm sure that she's supportive of divorce. But does her inaction when it comes to things that Duterte or her brother does, damn her to not receiving my vote or my support, like we were talking a bit earlier, maybe there's a middle ground there that I vote for her, but I do not campaign for her.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Or also, after the elections, I think is where the hard work also kicks in for citizens like us. Because again, there's no such person as a perfect representative. I don't think we agree on all sets of issues. Pia Cayetana and I probably have differences on other issues. But the point there is, will she be responsive to the kinds of criticisms, calls for accountability that we make after the elections? So we don't have to agree on everything. I think that's quite creepy if there's a candidate that's totally mirrors how I think. But the point is that politician responsive enough to consider my views or to hear other NGOs, civil society groups' views when they are in power. So I think that kind of calculation recognizes that yes, Pia Cayetano, as an example, is an imperfect candidate, but will I vote for her? Are my values in line enough with the values? Are there character flaws that I'm willing to just kind of bracket for now, but not forget about? Because I will still hold her accountable to those flaws. I think there's a danger too when it comes to the thinking, which is on the whole positive, that there is no perfect candidate, because that is certainly true. Right? There is no perfect candidate. But this kind of thinking, I think, is used by a lot of voters when they say, oh, I'll vote for Lito Lapid. Right. Because there are no perfect candidates. Exactly. Like everyone, okay, he's not the smartest person in the room, but all of them have flaws anyway. Like Bato is not the most gentle or, positive candidate there is, but everyone has flaws anyway. Right? So it can be used in a bad way as well. So I think instead of using it in an excuse, you still have to emphasize that you're looking for positive things, positive reasons to vote for these candidates. And candidates who represent the things that you value. I think is a top priority. So if you're a big advocate of federalism, then obviously Coco Pimentel might be the person for you. But if that's not top on your agenda and this man is known to be allied with the president, then probably he shouldn't be on your slate. So I think that kind of, it's not a formula, but that kind of internal deliberation and maybe deliberation amongst your friends will be very helpful in terms of deciding which imperfect candidate to put in office.
Okay, speaking of imperfect candidates, we've mentioned several anyway, so I'll throw one out there. Someone like Trillanes, right? He's not running for office. He's not running for office, but he's the kind of candidate I like because although I disagree with him on a lot of issues, because he's after all conservative.
Right.
Like I don't think he's pro-divorce.
No, he was anti-RH.
He was anti-RH as well. But when you ask him like why he's against it, like he stands on a platform and he discusses with you the reasons he's against something. Like he's not a template candidate who's just for the obviously positive things, education, alleviation of poverty. All of them will say that they're for that. But when it comes to controversial issues, he has a reasoned response to why, so ideally politicians are politicians you can deliberate with, as you said.
He's actually the perfect example of someone whose stand on issues really don't match my stand on issues.
They don't match my stand on issues.
If he were running for Senate, of course he's not, because his term is reached the maximum number of years already. But if he were running for office, I would vote for him because we need that kind of personality to counter the president. So again, he doesn't represent my stand on issues, but that personality is needed for this particular time. Right. So reading that vote, I think, has to be multidimensional also. Like, what role do you perform in the Senate? Which is also my worry with the Ahadith Cayetana example. Because what if Duterte suddenly says he wants to change the Constitution in a very silly form? Will she be a
sexist way?
Exactly. Will she be a lackey, or will she be this very feisty, super smart senator who will respond to the president? I don't know.
I don't know.
Which is pretty scary, right?
Yeah. So we've used two examples. Let's throw in a third one. Why don't we?
Oh my God,
Nancy Binay. We mentioned her earlier, right? Yes. She's been saying some very sensible things. Like of all the senators,
is that the bar? Just say sensible things.
Because the bar is certainly very low.
Okay.
Right? It's very low when Pia Cayetano says things like you mentioned earlier, boys will be boys. It's certainly set very low. Nancy Binay has been sensible on a lot of issues. And from the start, of course, we know the corruption allegations of the Binay family. They're still a dynastic group of politicians. But she has a certain dignity to her. Right? That I don't see in a lot of politicians who get into shouting matches or, very low match. Like they're trying to match what's happening. The discourse of populism is sort of the bar right now.
Yeah, that's true.
And for someone to be above that, like Nancy Binay, she scores points.
So you're voting for her?
I would
thinking.
Yeah, definitely. Under consideration.
Yeah, same. I mean, I used to be, 6 years ago, I was hypercritical of her. Remember the language about how she's an intern of her father, she has no political experience, and then suddenly she's a top senator. And that was kind of insane. Never attended any debates, we don't know what she stands for. But observing her in the 6 years, I mean,
she's been working hard.
Yeah, right? And she asks important questions in Senate investigations.
Yes, she does.
So I think using the Trillanes argument here, which is just kind of funny because, of course, they have history. I think that might work because we need an opposition voice in the Senate. Again, I probably don't agree with a lot of her positions and issues, but if we think that the Senate is a co-equal branch of the executive, then we need people who can speak up against a president or discipline a president who wants to concentrate power in the executive. So maybe I'm considering, although I'm not remorseful for the critical comments that we'd made against her in the past.
Definitely.
But I think, she's made some positive contributions in the Senate. So maybe.
And let's contrast her with someone like Lito Lapid.
Right.
Like both of them don't have the qualifications on paper to be a senator, right?
Right.
But Nancy, I think rose above that with her work, with the stuff that she said. What has Lito Lapid said that's of note?
Something about the family, because he has a lot of children, so he probably did that legislation. I can't remember which legislation in particular.
Yeah,
but there's that important legislation. But that aside, I can't remember.
So on the whole, I don't think like he's done his homework, so to speak. Like Nancy Binay, I think has.
Yes.
And these are the kinds of things, like you said, like the choices are stacked against us, us voters.
Yeah.
And we have to make very difficult choices.
Yes.
Like a lot of people on my friends list have certainly written off Pia Cayetano. But
really? Oh,
yes, they have. But but the choices, right?
Yes.
Like
and I think it gets very debatable when you look at, if you read surveys, it will be debatable if you look at the people on the, the 11, 12, 13, 14 mark. Like these people may or may not make it. And I think if people are making strategic choices, that also is, for me, a legitimate vote. Like, if you really don't think Amy Marcos should be a senator, or if you don't think Bongo should be a senator, then maybe you have to make those strategic choices in terms of voting candidates that you're probably not super fond of, but may just beat candidates that you don't like. So I would support strategic voting, with the exception, or not exception, but with a caveat that we hold these people accountable once they are in power, because they could be monsters too.
Yeah, and the only, I think, reason for me not supporting strategic voting is if it included like the non-negotiables. Like if it included me having to vote for someone like Amy Marcos, for example.
Yeah.
Like that's a no. That's a no for me.
But it's funny because she's an advocate of LGBT rights.
Yes, as with Bongbong Marcos, who has a lot of progressive things going for him as well. But there's just certain candidates that I would never vote for. Like maybe my line is being the family of a dictator. But
this is the challenge, right? We keep on saying don't vote for a candidate based on the last name. Yeah. And I think the reverse is happening here. These guys have a bad last name, but they've actually done something quite okay. But it's really just unforgivable because they are complicit to historical revisionism. They lie about their degrees. What else are they lying about?
Yeah. They're still doing the historical revisionism.
Yeah, and that's a non-negotiable.
So that's a non-negotiable
for me as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Nicole, for being here again.
Thank you.
And thank you to our millions of staff. On behalf of them, see you next week.